Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I would have loved to join you at Macquarie University, but I just spent 3.5 months at Westmead Hospital after undergoing pelvic fracture surgery and a COVID infection. So that's why I'm presenting online. On a more positive note, I'm now a technologically enhanced human being, which is great. Okay, so I'm going to talk about computer-assisted appraisal analysis using the natural language toolkit, as well as SentiStrength and Notepad++. I will also be presenting the results of my recent research on intersubjective positioning based on 2 samples of data retrieved from a subreddit focusing on Australian politics and the topic of the Australian election, which was held on the 21st of May. As you probably know, evaluative language is imbued with emotion. The appraisal system depicted here was developed by Martin and White. It's based on the Halliday framework and underpinned by a social constructionist orientation. Given this perspective, the concept of emotion or affect does not lie within the individual itself, but it may be found in the intersubjective affective practice of several social actors, which may be located within a specific situation and a wider socio-historical context. In contrast with emotion, the notion of opinion, either personal or public opinion, relates to both individual and collective attitude. And it's also linked to intersubjective positioning. The appraisal system, as you probably know, describes several resources for the construction of emotion under the umbrella category of attitude, namely affect, judgment, and appreciation. Affect pertains to a speaker's expression of emotion. Judgment involves their evaluation of other individuals' abilities and ethics. And appreciation deals with the evaluation of the aesthetics of a concrete or abstract object. The system of engagement then identifies resources that may be employed to adopt a certain position towards propositions. And of course, all of this can be amplified or weakened using resources which fall under graduation. Sentiment analysis then, or emotion artificial intelligence, or opinion mining, is the process of using algorithms and computer technologies to systematically detect, extract, and classify the subjective information and affective states expressed in a text, such as opinions, attitudes, and emotions regarding a service, product, person, or topic. Since it may be used to determine emotion in text, the use of natural language processing has been extensively applied within the field of communication analysis, even though computational sentiment analysis is limited to polarity. It's also dictionary-based and often lacks sufficient interpretation when used. Obviously, it's still important to actually interpret your statistical data and to describe the context of situation and just the context in general. Appraisal analysis of digital corpora, larger corpora, comes with several challenges. Analyzing large samples of text may still be seen as a subjective activity or practice, especially when done by a sole researcher, and it often lacks sufficient contextualization when being practiced. Distinguishing between semantic categories is not an easy task either, and sometimes the boundaries between, especially between judgment and appreciation resources may be slightly blurred. Other non-standard language use, such as slang or dialect, may pose additional challenges. The whole process is also rather time-consuming, since it involves manual annotation as well. And finally, there is still a lack of data sets for specialized domains, which is why it might be easier to simply retrieve your own data using Python encoding, which is exactly what I did. Okay, some more definitions, I'm afraid. The main distinction between misinformation and disinformation is concerned with speakers' intention, which is, of course, very difficult to detect. But if you focus on the pragmatic or rhetorical effects of the propositions, you may be able to find out what's going on. Okay, whether a speaker has good or bad intentions, it's not always clear. I would like to argue that users tend to employ engagement resources that are monoglossic rather than heteroglossic when spreading misinformation on SNSs or social network services. Why? Well, the utterances don't involve any reference to other voices or viewpoints and are presented as non-negotiable information. You can't argue with these propositions. Okay. Of course, you also have to consider whether you are dealing with experiential meanings or evaluative ones. Social actors may construe their own reality by sharing facts, signaled by phrases such as, I think that X is Y, with Y being a fact, as opposed to propositions that contain evaluative meaning, as in, I think that X is Y, I think that X is Z, sorry, with Z being an emotional state. In its combination with appraisal theory, sentiment analysis has primarily been employed to study attitude, comprising affect, judgment, and appreciation, because it's fairly easy to integrate this particular taxonomy of appraisals into a computational framework. This gap, so not a lot of work has been done on engagement and graduation with digital corpora. So that's what motivated me to take a closer look at these two systems as well, in an attempt to facilitate a computer-assisted appraisal analysis, especially since these two systems are highly relevant when it comes to the analysis of misinformation. Okay. And then finally, some scholars, some very brave scholars, have been trying to establish universal or unified taxonomies of evaluative meaning. But of course, the classification of grammatical or semantic categories is a rather daunting task. My own research method, this is work in progress, by the way. It does include sentiment analysis, but I use the SentiStrength algorithm, which is freely available to all researchers and allows for the automatic analysis of up to 16,000 social web text per second with human level accuracy, since it has been optimized by machine learning. So it's not just dictionary based. So what did I do? I first scraped the API of selected SNS, in this case Reddit, using Python and some coding. Then I performed a parts of speech, I did parts of speech tagging, not using SentiStrength, but using the natural language toolkit developed by I think it's Groper, Yeah. Okay, so the NLTK available online. And I use the obtained lists. And I know some people, when they hear the word lists or lists of words, are starting to freak out right now, but please bear with me. Okay, so I used the obtained lists, but without any of the duplicates. Those were removed first. To search the corpus on Notepad++, which provided me with a clear overview of the context of each of the appraisal resources. So I'll show you an example in a minute. The specific appraisals were then quantified, and I also retrieved their intensity from the immersion rationale provided by SentiStrength. And of course, this was followed by a more detailed analysis, interpretation, a description of several relevant examples, and further contextualization comprising critical theory. Of course, it would be great to do this as part of a team, so don't hesitate if you like this kind of work, just send me an email. Here's an overview of the appraisal categories and the corresponding grammatical categories I use, and the POS tags, so the parts of speech tags from the NLTK. So you have adjectives there. The tag is JJ, so you just enter the command in on Visual Studio Code using Python, and the computer provides you with a list of all adjectives within the corpus. Okay. For example, engagement may involve the use of, it often involves the use of mental verbs, right? Such as believe, or comment adjuncts, such as indeed or importantly, or modal auxiliaries, such as can or will. And all these POS tags are available online as well. Here you have the appraisal and grammatical categories for graduation and the POS tags. Okay. Yeah, so for repetition under graduation there, so repetition of words can be used, you know, under the category of graduation. If you say something is really, really important, you put an emphasis on important, you can find this repetition of words using a regular expression or regex. Okay, so you just enter the regex into the search window, and you can click on find next, or I would click on find all in all open documents, and it will give you all the repetitions. And here's a list of all the part of speech tags used in the Pen Tree Bank project, and these are from the Natural Language Toolkit. Okay, so why Notepad++? Not just because I love using it, but also because it has numerous advantages, as you can see here. For example, Notepad++ makes it easy to manage substantial amounts of data. It was developed for coding, and it also includes various line operations for the pre-processing of data, which is important as well. You can't just feed a text to your computer to run a sentiment analysis. The text needs to be pre-processed. So you have to remove certain symbols and anything that is not useful. And then when you have your list with POS tagged words, you can also use Notepad++ to remove any empty lines and any duplicates. doubles. So it further allows then for a simultaneous search of all open documents and supports several languages as well. It's fantastic, I love it. So you can also do various regex searches, and you can just experiment with the regex searches. It's a lot of fun. That's what I occupied myself with when I was in the hospital. Okay. Here you can see a benchmark comparison of sentiment analysis tools. As you can see, the SentiStrength algorithm can be used for many different things. It is one of the best tools available to conduct sentiment analysis, and even outperforms better known tools such as Beta or TextBlob. As you can see here, Beta has an accuracy of 69%. Well, this was in this particular study it was a large study comparing different sentiment analysis tools. So as you can see, the SentiStrength algorithm had an accuracy of 93%, which is fantastic. It can be used for the following, not just to detect polarity, positive or negative. It can also detect irony, idioms, intensity, emojis, or text in other languages. As far as emoji or emojis are concerned, those still need to be checked and further analyzed. We need Michelle and Lorenzo for those, because all sentiment analysis does, all SentiStrength tells you is that they're either positive or negative. Okay. It has human level accuracy because it has been compiled using machine learning and not just it's not just lexicon based, and it has been specifically developed for the analysis of social media text. So you can't use it for POS tagging, and that's why I opted to use the POS tagging tool provided by the NLTK. For my paper, well, the example paper here, I retrieved a total of nearly 5,000 comments and replies in total from the Australian politics subreddit at 2 different points in time for the sake of comparison. The main focus of the Reddit users on this particular subreddit during this period of time was the Australian election. And as you can see, the main collective attention shifted from Labour to the Greens party over time. And here's another representation of the social network on the subreddit using Gephi. That's just a program you can use to create diagrams. And it provides insight into the appraisers, visualized here as nodes. So the nodes are appraisers and the edges are the interactions between the appraisers. So it's their online activity. It also calculates a representative sample for you that you can use to analyze. And of course, you're free to analyze as much as you like. Okay, here are the results of the sentiment analysis that I performed using SentiStrength. And it shows that the overall sentiment in both discourse samples, in both corpora, A and B, is more negative than positive. So it just detects the polarity. But what's most interesting here are the outliers, okay? Extremely negative or extremely positive. since these outliers reveal strong sentiment and topics that encourage more intense sentiment may be associated with misinformation. Based on the number of appraisals with high intensity in the corpora and what is being appraised, as you can see here on this slide. So based on that, I determined the topics that generated the strongest sentiment among these Reddit users on Australian politics. And as you can see here, in Corpus A, those topics were media and missile disinformation and financial matters as well. As a matter of fact, the Redditors were also mostly focused on fake news. There were heated discussions and a lot of emotion was generated based on the topic of fake news in Corpus B as well. So you can see there how I added the intensity. So you have sad, and it affects unhappiness, and it has an intensity of -3. And so that's from the SentiStrength emotional rationale. And this is on a scale of -1 to -5 in terms of negativity. And what is being appraised is mentioned there as well. Murdoch's smear campaign, corrupt media, stupid people, media sharing information, etc., etc. Stories written by journalists as well. Here you can see how you can conduct a simultaneous search on Notepad++. So any duplicates were removed first. You have your list with the adjectives as a result of POS tagging using NLTK, and then remove all duplicates because, you know, if you do a search on horrible, you don't need to find it in the list itself 20 times because it wouldn't be very practical to work with. Okay, so you get a clear overview in the window at the bottom of the screen. What you can see there is the adjective itself, horrible, and you can see the adjective within its immediate context, within in the sentence, and you can also see the intensity because I've included the emotion rationale as well. And you, instead of clicking find next, you click find all in all opened documents, obviously. Okay. These are the results of the appraisal analysis for Corpus A. As I said, this is a work in progress, and I didn't manage to quite finish everything. I only had a few days to do this since I was discharged from the hospital a couple of days ago. So this table summarizes all the results. As you can see here, the Reddit users in Corpus A were mostly employing negative judgment resources to evaluate the ability and ethics of several politicians. And so this corresponds with the results of the sentiment analysis as well. And in Corpus B, I had a quick look at Corpus B and users most frequently employed resources from the same category. So same thing in Corpus B. This is an overview of all the engagement resources used by the Australian politics subreddit users in both discourse samples. The number is per 1,000 words. And it's clear that they are mostly rejecting propositions put forward by other Reddit users. So you have disclaim, deny, as the most popular subcategory. Okay. And as it turns out, they are doing this because in their view, the utterances contain false information. So they're all focusing on false information while sharing false information and accusing other users of sharing false information or fake news. Over time, this type of behavior decreased, however. Mis or disinformation. Misinformation may be detected by searching several POS tags that correspond with grammatical categories such as verbs, subordinating conjunctions, adverbs of manner, and so on, as you can see here. And these are all monoglossic propositions or presuppositions. So when a Redditor writes, "It was the worst gaffe imaginable," then it doesn't exactly invite the other users to further discuss the issue. Okay. And when they write something like, "It's more important to people whether they have a job and how much they pay for their mortgage before they're tossed out on the street." So you have the subordinating conjunction before there. The presumption is that people are being tossed out on the street. Okay. Several more examples there. All from the subcategory of expand, entertain. So there's dialogical expansion. That's what's going on here. And of course, it needs to be pointed out, needs to be noted, that the Reddit users they're still using more heteroglossic propositions than monoglossic ones in both corpora, as they continuously exchange argumentation about the upcoming election. Heteroglossic utterances do invite other users to either enter into a dialogue about the matter or to start explaining and defending their own viewpoints. And here you can see several examples. The monoglossic propositions do not invite to any further discussions where there's no dialogical expansion there. This is where the dialogical expansion is going on in the heteroglossic proposition. Okay, so it's the end of the day. And finally, any graduation resources may be deducted from the SentiStrength results, since all amplified or downturned words are indicated in the emotion rationale. Of course, you can also conduct, you should also conduct another search on POS tags commonly associated with graduation, such as adverbs, for example, extremely or really. So monoglossic propositions often contain misinformation. That's one of the findings that I have come up with so far. And the users of the Australian politics subreddit tend to engage in heated discussions that involve the expression of strong negative emotion and the constant negotiation of opinions, mostly for influential gain. So they want to come across as the expert on the Australian election and on Australian politics in general. So I think it's important to distinguish between pragmatic and ideological presuppositions and critical discourse analysis, which I have been practicing as well. They're on the lookout for hidden ideologies, and that's how they understand presuppositions. But I tend to see presuppositions as a dialectical notion following Walton and Toulmin rhetorics, right? So as argumentation based on certain presumptions. Users can either accept or reject any propositions shared by other users, So the focus is on the user's attitude towards truth based but in terms of reasonableness. So in that sense, I don't think that we are living in a post-truth society. The fact that we are so concerned about the sharing of misinformation online or about fake news shows that we do care about truth. So the main issue is not misinformation, but manipulation by various collectivities online and manipulation of information on Reddit especially, but also on other SNSs. Of course, there are online trolls to appeal to emotion and share content that generates strong negative sentiment, and it often involves ad hominem attacks. And there's an example from Corpus A here. Let me just read it out. Just so you know, nobody knows what you're talking about. It's quite confrontational, isn't it? Reddit has a community-based strategy for the recognition of disinformation, but there is still a lot of manipulation going on. Users are sharing misinformation based on presumed common ground where there is none, or while there is none. So this type of research is relevant, at least I hope so, in terms of online content moderation. But not just that, I think we need to, as users, online citizens ourselves, we need to counter misinformation using deliberation and argumentation, and try and encourage more equal and less polarizing online dialogue. Anyway, I hope to further explore intersubjectivity on SNSs, and I do believe that computer-assisted appraisal analysis can definitely help identify attitudinal and other patterns in large amounts of data, which is paramount when it comes to the analysis of digital discourse. And that's all I have for you.